Who is the brave Korok warrior? What role does the new Gerudo play? And where does Construct Link fit in the timeline? These trailers may seem mysterious, but when pieced together with Tears of the Kingdom lore and the Masterworks book, they might just reveal the entire story of Age of Imprisonment, and the truth could change everything we thought we knew about Hyrule. Age of Imprisonment is not far away. In a month's time, we'll finally get to learn so much. Like, who is this? Why is every boss like this? And who is this? I have my theories, and that's what I plan on sharing with you today, as I try to predict as much of the storyline of Age of Imprisonment as I possibly can, given the information that we have so far. In this video, I'm going to go through all 3 trailers released so far, picking out the parts that seem to impact the storyline, and then try to actually predict the storyline based on the video evidence we have. And I'll also try to tie it into the areas of Masterworks. The book released on the 30th of August 2024 in Japan only, that talks exclusively about a lot of the lore dropped from Tears of the Kingdom, as I think this will be relevant too. All of that information will come courtesy of LivixBobbyx, who has worked incredibly hard on translating the books back to English for us from their native Japanese. So, let's head to an age just before the Imprisoning War, and go predict what's to come. So, to try and piece together the main story beats, first we need to analyse the trailers and the information that we have so far, including any offbeat character renders and information given to us from Nintendo themselves inside of Masterworks. The first that we saw of this game was during the promotion of the Nintendo Switch 2, in April 2025. The shock announcement of the game begins with the Zonai mural that has been present now since the promotional work for Tears of the Kingdom. These murals feature heavily in the chambers underneath Hyrule Castle and make up a large part of the intro to the game. These murals all depict events that eventually lead to the Imprisoning War, from the descension of the Zonai from the skies to the lands below, and the marriage of a Hylian to a Zonai king, right the way through to the death of a new queen, the rise of a mad god, and a girl becoming a dragon in order to fight ancient evil. We watch a lot of this play out in the Memories of Zelda, shown to us whenever we find a tear of the dragon, found within these murals that litter the world. A final reminder left from a princess who left her own mortality in order to save the world from ancient slumbering evil. These slabs, as it comes to no surprise, will likely make up the bulk of the story for Age of Imprisonment, as they tell the story in its most primitive form. What happens in the past after Zelda is snatched from the jaws of death by the power of the secret stone that she finds upon the duo's investigation deep beneath the depths of Hyrule Castle. Zelda in this trailer suggests a completely new understanding of what these stones tell us.
Joined hands with the Hylians who dwelled on the surface. Their union led to a great and prosperous kingdom. But in time, a terrible evil arose.
Suggesting to us that Zelda is perhaps seeing these murals now for a second time, this time with the whole backstory filled in. This would mean that this scene should be somewhere near the end of the game, which also would tie up with the idea that the antechamber where Ganondorf is sealed needing to be in the final area of the game, as Age of Calamity should surely end with Rauru sealing Ganondorf by sacrificing what is left of his light power, in turn encasing himself in stone, which deteriorates away over time, leaving just the Zonai arm that seals Ganondorf away. Her retelling of the story also gives us an indication on when this game actually takes place within the Tears of the Kingdom timeline, which is something written heavily about within Masterworks. During chapter 3 of this book, we see an entire breakdown of the timeline of the Zonai. It starts, as almost all of the Zelda stories begin, with the creation of the heaven and earth. 3 goddesses creating Hyrule. Only in this instance the secret stones are also created. The 3 goddesses entrust the earth to the goddess Hylia, and thus the world is made. The Zonai, a race in Hyrule at the time, are given the secret stones by Hylia in order to protect them. The Zonai are, as far as we are aware at this point, a highly civilized race, capable of cultivation and mining with their work in the depths, and are also magically imbued, shown by their ability to abandon the surface layer of the earth and rise up into the sky, whilst also leaving some of their own and most notably their constructs behind in order to continue mining operations in the depths. It would appear though, as if mining was not the only thing the Zonai were doing during this time. The building of larger constructs, almost as experiments to see if they could house Hylian spirits, seemed to also have been concentrated upon, though vastly hidden away from the annals of history. The tribe prospered high in the air, but on the surface things were not as simple. Each tribe left remaining. The Rito of Tabantha, searching for soaring vistas and high altitudes. The Zora of Lanayru, swimming to a large reservoir of fresh water. The Goron of Aldin, hungrily ambling their way towards their favourite foods. And the Hylians, taking up the massive land due to their high numbers, formed settlements in all of their respective areas. One of the tribes in this world though, was not like the others, ran by a tyrant king, who sought only the legendary power of the secret stones for himself. This man was the latest male born in a succession of males, only being born once every 100 years, and hungered for nothing more than raw power. His act as king, and most notably his succession to the crown, is likely something that will be seen within Age of Imprisonment, judging by a lot of his character artwork having him seated on a throne of sorts. In what would be a series first, showing Ganondorf officially being sworn in as King of the Gerudo, would see him declare the Gerudo as their own independent country, completely separating the lands of Hyrule to the Gerudo town. If this sequence is where I propose it is, at the end of the game, then we are treated to the polar opposite in the next scene, as Zelda lands in a strange world and wakes up to find Rauru staring at her, as within Tears of the Kingdom. This is where I expect the game to start, after likely showing us the opening cutscene from Tears of the Kingdom, but perhaps with a slight change in perspective from Link to Zelda, as the two find the husk of Ganondorf underneath the castle. Rauru informs her that he is the first king of Hyrule and Sonia is the queen of Hyrule, and Zelda is left trying to digest everything around her.
So that's Hyrule Castle?
Her new surroundings. These strange, new but friendly beings, claiming that they are the royalty that she knows that she is, and the sight of a castle that looks nothing like the castle she grew up in, despite it being named the same as her family home. The camera cuts to a shot of Ganondorf now, grinning. There is not much to go off here, but there is a mirroring shot to this in the most recent trailer, which we will look at soon, and the character artwork for the game seems to once again show a smirking Ganondorf sat upon a throne. I have only one suggestion for where this scene is placed, so to speak, and I'm guessing here that this scene is indeed the final few frames from Ganondorf being made the King of the Gerudo. The reason why I haven't opted for another idea, where potentially this could be scenes of Ganondorf ordering an attack on Hyrule, is the first time we see this kind of attack in Tears of the Kingdom, with the Gerudo Assault memory scene. Ganondorf in this scene orders one of his followers to blow horns to signal the onslaught of Molduga upon the kingdom. This, of course, could be where he issues the order, but to me at least this felt a little bit more like we were witnessing the first phase of a plan being completed, the rising of Ganondorf to his position of power. What I had been alluding to earlier on is now shown, with Minoru running away from her frogs while on top of her construct, leading to the idea that these have been built and experimented on long before Minoru in essence fused what was left of her spirit to the Purapad. She had already fused a part of her spirit to this construct, and here it fights with her. There is a 2 or 3 second clip here of Rauru clenching his fist. The sky here is red, the same red as when the Demon King Ganondorf is born, meaning that this shot here is likely one of the first shots of Rauru after the death of his beloved wife. The final shot in this trailer shows us the 4 sages standing in a line, with Rauru, Sonia and Zelda. This looks to be a shot outside of the Forgotten Temple before this place becomes Sonia's eventual grave, where these leaders of their respective races are gifted sagely powers through the secret stones that are gifted to them by Rauru and Sonia here. What really spoke to me here was the idea that we would be going around each individual region once again and recruiting the sages directly to our cause, meaning that the first act of the game would likely be established as follows. Zelda lands in Rauru's time. Rauru informs Zelda that monsters are in huge number, threatening the lives of their people And so an exorcism pilgrimage is required to rid the monsters from the lands forever. Ganondorf takes the Gerudo throne. The deeper threat of Ganondorf is unveiled, possibly through the Gerudo assault scene in Tears of the Kingdom. Hearing of and seeing Ganondorf's power firsthand, Rauru decides to recruit the tribal leaders. The recruitment for the leaders is almost backed up in this scene in the Partner Showcase trailer on July 31st. Here we see a sweeping shot of Hyrule Castle, before watching Sonia and Zelda walk down a passageway on the outside of the castle. It would appear as if they walk into a ceremony of sorts, where Rauru is gifting someone a large helmet, identifiable as the shape of the helmet of Varudania, the Goron sage. A couple of presumptions could be made here, as a big deal is made over this mask in particular being handed off. We will likely get a cutscene of all of the original champions to be, as it were, being given the role of sage, with their respective helmets being given to them by Rauru or Sonia. Or we will only be seeing one of these moments due to the repetitive nature of the imprisoning war cutscenes in Tears of the Kingdom, and therefore Varudania is the first sage to be recruited by Rauru. I mentioned earlier the idea of the exorcism pilgrimage, and the reason that I believe that this will be happening is something shown here during this scene, where Zelda watches on whilst Rauru and Sonia seem to combine their power. At first, this appears like it could be one of the new game mechanic Stink Strikes, but the placement of Zelda here in the background feels almost too deliberate, and unless this is an image caught at a very opportune moment, to me at least this feels like a pre-rendered cutscene graphic. Immediately, with the two combining their power and it being in a large open area, I jumped immediately to this thought of the game showing us the lore that is within Masterworks, something that I do feel Nintendo would actually want to get a visual representation of. The Exorcism Pilgrimage is something that is heavily detailed within Masterworks, mentioned within the timeline in Chapter 3 and then given its own description on pages 382 and 383, and begins with a journey being set out upon by Rauru and Sonia. Rauru gives Sonia a secret stone to amplify her powers over time, and alongside his power to destroy darkness with his powers over light, the two drive back evil in areas where monster activity has spiked. Once the evil has been destroyed, the two combine their powers, giving birth to their own Sync Strike of sorts. The power of light causes the monsters to continue to be driven back, while Sonia has the ability to slow time around the area to a point where monsters can just no longer spawn. The remnant of this power is then fused together into an orb, which lay in the area which has been affected by monsters, allowing the area to then remain completely clear of monster activity in the future for an almost undeterminable amount of time. This stone-like seal would then house the power to repel evil, would then become encased by devotees of Rauru and Sonia, building an effigy around them in the shape of the king and queen. Shrines were then built around those figures, the powers of time and light spilling out through them in a blue and green mist swirl that is seen from miles away. This light is thought to be the sign that the shrine is working, keeping evil at bay, and when it goes out, the area's protection is therefore lost. This magic is not just limited to the surface level, however, as these magical orbs also seem to take root, forming branches and trees underneath the earth's crust, giving birth to light roots found within the depths, with the weak light they emit being just enough to once again drive off evil. This journey is what I believe the first act of the game will actually likely centre upon, given the information afforded to us by Nintendo in just the first two trailers alone. But of course, there's more. Sonia has a moment where she tells us,
"Given an opening, he will bear his fangs."
This is 100% foreshadowing to the events that we already know will occur. But as she states this, we transition into a scene where Rauru, Minru and Zelda are walking inside of a cave. I will admit, previously I failed to put two and two together here, but given this sign over here, showing that entry was likely restricted until Minru made it her business to venture here, and the zone I designed lights here, that showed quite clearly a significance to the tribe, as these are only seen in areas of zone I importance. This cave here seems to be the opening section to us finally getting to meet the new construct that is hinted at the end of this trailer, and is shown in action in the latest trailer for the game. For the purposes of ease, this character is now going to be known, for now, as Construct Link, or C-Link for short. The idea that these three are travelling down here to obtain something that will be powerful enough to stop Ganondorf makes me immediately think that this happens within the mid to late game, almost late into an Act 2 as it were, so we can hold on to that until later on, when I think we can fill in a few more of the gaps, but we'll need information from the final trailer first. Going through the rest of this trailer, we're shown a young Gerudo female, who is, by the seams of things, a brand new character.
But you sought it from Hyrule of all places? This is madness!
There are a number of ways that this could be construed at this point, but I think that this is being said directly to Ganondorf, from one of his closer allies. Of course, it may not be the case, but it feels like this is said in a manner that reflects disgust. Disgust for someone that has perhaps suggested that the power that they need may be in Hyrule. This would in turn place this scene before the Molduga attack. This character seems like she could be an important part of the storyline, and despite it having no real founding other than this one line of dialogue, I can envision her being the one to spearhead the Gerudo movement against Ganondorf, in turn outcasting him from the very tribe that he should be king of. She quite clearly, with this dialogue, has a very strong hatred for Hyrule, one strong enough for her to rebel against her own king. There is one other character similar to this within the Zelda universe, Ocarina of Time's Naboru, who understands at the time of the game that Ganondorf is still her king, but dislikes him and seeks to infiltrate the Spirit Temple in order to find an artifact that could help stop him. This isn't to say that this character here is a spiritual successor to Naboru, and it likely is a stretch to say so, but it is a glaring similarity that this character could have to one in Zelda's history, and repeating history is something that the Zelda team do love to do. We get to the end of the second trailer where we see that sequence involving Fi's theme and this ancient construct, which we learn an awful lot about in the Switch 2 Direct that happened on the 12th of September. That trailer opens with Ganondorf smirking widely into the screen. He has full control over his powers of darkness at this point, indicating that we are looking at this happening after the death of Queen Sonia, during a section that perhaps sees us fighting off waves of enemies all within a blood moon. These gloom hands rise towards the sky inside of Hyrule Castle, before we start to see more demonic forms of some of the larger enemies and bosses from within Tears of the Kingdom. There is a Blood Moon Frox, a Hinox, and waves of Moblins. There's also a Blood Moon version of Muktarok, and from the looks of things a more humanised Blood Moon version of Marbled Goma. These I think will be somewhere towards the end of the game, after Ganondorf has his hands on Sonia's secret stone, with each of the territories to some degree being under massive threat once again from these creatures. This will be where we learn of the monster's ceiling and placements for Tears of the Kingdom, and of course their downgrade in power, likely in part due to the fact that Ganondorf, by the point you beat these monsters in Tears of the Kingdom, just isn't up to his own full power. The trailer then cuts to this scenic, far distant shot of Hyrule Castle, indicating that once again the castle is going to be a pivotal spot for the game, considering that all three trailers released so far have had at least one of these shots of a Zonai inspired Hyrule Castle within them. As we're shown more of the combat, we get to meet our first brand new character, a brave young Korok who seems to use the elemental fruits and a small sword as a weapon. We're given no further information at this stage, but there is more information later on in this trailer, and also in the promotional art that we can use to gain some understanding of who this character may well be. Another new character, this time another Gerudo, is revealed as the game formally introduces the idea of sync strikes. Given that these are activated by two people in the same area, I'm going to have to presume that this is indeed a new playable character, and that this is in fact one of the defecting Gerudo tribe members. In fact, as the game explains there will be two-player cooperative play, we can see the field here is almost full of Gerudo. They seem at this stage to actually be hostile, with Rauru on the top screen here fighting off waves of them, whilst Minoru drives through them. Within Ocarina of Time, we've seen the aftermath of a Hyrulean civil war before, and heard stories about said war. But could this be for the first time in series history where we actually see the civil war play out? In Tears, it's easy to imagine that this civil war is all about the secret stones, and about Ganondorf wanting that power for himself. The Gerudo as a result split into two, the group that will eventually take Karakara Bazaar and the Gerudo town, and the group that ultimately ends up losing the war in Ganondorf's group. I do think though these are the first real scenes that we get of an official civil war, something that is incredibly exciting for Zelda fans. A giant beam of purple energy shoots into the sky, reminiscent of the same energy that erupts when Ganondorf reaches full power in Tears of the Kingdom. The malice spreads, but the group are not in a spot that they would need to be in for them to witness the Demon King's rise to power, meaning that this eruption here is likely yet another show of Ganondorf's power, perhaps what leads them to realising that they need something that they simply do not have in this time era, a hero. Minoru unveils that she has been building something in secret during Rauru and Sonia's pilgrimage, an effigy to the hero that Zelda has been talking about, but with a few extra modifications. And there is indeed a twist. It can't run without being tied to a spirit, as per her construct, and if they need a courageous hero to save them, the construct would need the spirit of said courageous hero. This sends the group into the final acts of the game, where they meet a young Korok who has incredible courage. He shows that he will fight, no matter the size of the enemy. He shows that the spirit of the hero resides within him. This may sound like a strange stretch, but I wouldn't have come to this without any proof at all. Sure, this is all hypothetical and may not be how things play out, but I simply cannot ignore the official artwork of the game, and everywhere that C-Link is in his full human form, the Korok is there, sitting on his shoulder. Not only that, but they also seem to both be wearing a purple scarf with the exact same patterning on it as Raru's clothing, all three of them covered in subtle triangular markings, a shape synonymous with Zelda lore and the Triforce. Atop of that, a trailer shows our new Korok friend here physically riding the construct during its fight around the Gleeok. Between the colouring and the fact that these two are both together almost all of the time, seemingly it would appear as if there is some form of soul linking going on, that the soul of the hero is tethered between the two. This brave Korok, as the American trailer suggests, could well be required to make this construct work at all. But then we still have to take into consideration the tease left at the end of the second trailer, which suggests that a spirit from long past that sleeps within the Blade of Evil's Bane is a key part of the story. There are a couple of answers to what this theme may well mean. I have touched base on it before, but there is a chance here that Nintendo have potentially retconned 5's theme to symbolise the spirit of the hero. This is based on knowledge that Nintendo do tend to retcon pieces of Zelda lore, especially parts of the timeline, into one another. That is, of course, unless we can find a way of making this work within a tangible storyline. Fi, since her inception in the series in Skyward Sword, has always been a spirit that sleeps within the Master Sword, and at first I presumed that this meant the sword from within Skyward Sword, which could theoretically still exist within the world of Tears of the Kingdom, however many years removed the two games are. Now though, with the inclusion of this little Korok and C-Link, I'm not entirely convinced that this has anything to do with Fi, unless we very briefly see a snippet of this Korok holding a sword. We don't get to see much of this, and even going through frame by frame it can be hard to make out, but on the Koei Tecmo website we see that there will indeed be a treasure box edition of the game, with collectibles alongside the game itself. Included within this are these models of C-Link and the Korok on an acrylic stand, where while it is behind him, you can see the pommel and the grip of the sword as well as the end of the blade. It's not the easiest to make out, but it looks like the pommel is somewhat shaped like a ram's head, with two curved ends. The grip is wrapped around with this stylized green tape, but most telling is this shot here, which I could only really get by trawling frame by frame. The hilt of the sword, which is very close to the original design of the goddess sword from Skyward Sword. The final shots of this trailer are as follows. Zelda looks up into the sky to see C-Link flying at an incredibly fast rate towards an ice Gleeok, with our new Korok friend on board. He flies around the beast before then diving downwards, recreating the dive sequence from Tears of the Kingdom, where he then transforms from his plane into a more human form, where then his final form is revealed in the final artwork, and now confirmed box art for the game. He wears a hooded tunic, similar to the styling of Tears of the Kingdom, and a purple cloak with concentric triangles all over the shawl section that act as his sleeve. He has not one but two Zonai arms, one with a shield attached and another with a Zonite sword. One of the reasons why I support the Korok actually wielding a potential Master Sword alike is because this guy clearly works better with the idea of an energy blade, which the Zonite's blade is. He has long flowing hair made of green energy, falling either side of his face, and a surprisingly humanized face, complete with eyes. This, undoubtedly, and as talked about in the community, is the stand-in for Link in this game, and wherever he goes, as stated before, he's flanked by our wonderful courageous new Korok. We've gone through a lot here so far, but as the final part of this video as it were, I promised that I would try to put together a rough timeline of events for the game, starting with what I've already predicted in this video. As I got into editing this video, a new gameplay trailer came to light from the Tokyo Game Show. This footage shows mainly the trio of Minoru, Rauru and Zelda heading underground to presumably find the construct that was teased during the second trailer for the game. This of course does mess with the next section quite a bit, and it may throw my ideas of timing out quite dramatically. This seems to be a tutorial section of sorts, and the most notable reasons for this are on-screen prompts teaching the players how to fight and pick up items, and the fact that the team picks up items here for the first time. However, in what would be typical Zelda fashion, while this is an introductory area to the game, I feel like this area is a prelude to us viewing all of Zelda's memories in full. This area to me at least feels like it will be a short and sweet tutorial area, before we're then thrown into playing out the events that transpired to get us to this point. In addition to this new gameplay trailer is a new artwork drop on the Koei Tecmo website. On the 6th of October we were treated to getting to learn a little more about the sages and a brand new character who has only been shown very briefly before this point. I would first of all like to thank GossipGeist for managing to provide the standalone images, and I'd also like to thank a very good friend of mine for translating. The names which he has provided are a very rough translation, and of course character names may not be final in the translations of the game. First of all we have Augusta. He is the leader of the Goron tribe, both intelligent and generous. He has known Rauru for a long time and is considered a close friend. We next have Kaya, a Zora princess who is skilled in martial arts. Her bravery and courage in battle inspires her people. Krafika, the Rito sage, is a witty warrior. His words and actions are hard to understand, but deep down he is loyal and caring towards his friends. And finally, we have Adi, who is a kind-hearted warrior who unites the Goron tribe. She is said to obey her tribal leader Ganondorf and adheres to the code of the Gerudo closely. Finally, we also have Laneria, a maid who serves specifically Princess Zelda. She is a gentle personality, is quick at her work and is trusted deeply by Rauru. She always carries this book around with her, keeping records of everything, and has a strong curiosity about mystical things. This, I believe, is likely to be the Chamberlain, who leaves us diary entries on the Sky Islands throughout Tears of the Kingdom. With all of this new information coming through quicker than I can produce this video, the next section of the video doesn't take any of this into account, but I did want to make it known that I had seen it. With that being said, let's move on to what will definitely be my rendition of the story that's to come. The game begins with us travelling, with Rauru, Minoru and Zelda underground. We learn about the depths here, and about the Zonai items before being thrust into battle with the Frogs. However, as we approach a door that requires unsealing, Zelda, Rauru and Minoru begin to recap the events of the last short while, the points that have led them to this point in the game. Zelda's story begins when she lands in the past, to the bewilderment of Rauru and Sonia, who go into more detail than before about the fact that they are king and queen of Hyrule. and that Zelda should come with them to the castle, with the same line as in Tears of the Kingdom, to give us a reminder that Zelda and Sonia are very distant relatives.
No,
We'll tell everyone that you're a distant relative of ours. It is true, after all.
On their walk around Hyrule Castle, one of the royal duo, whilst I said Rauru earlier on, I actually think Sonia, with her quick blossoming relationship with Zelda may be more likely, informs the princess that this land is overruled with monsters, and the only way to rid them is for the duo to travel from place to place, sealing the creatures away. The missions follow out, with you being taken to different provinces, healing those areas and setting the first few shrines, whilst here Rauru seeks out the heads of their respective areas, and as a measure of trust between the Zonionese races, he offers a hand to those in charge, appointing them as royal sages, giving each one a heavy metal helmet. Meanwhile, Ganondorf is crowned as the king of the Gerudo. He hears about the royal outing and understands some power must be used in order to seal the creatures away. He smiles to himself, understanding what he must do next, and formulates a plan to see the strength of the king and queen's magic firsthand. And so he declares his allegiance to the royal family and to Hyrule, much to the chagrin of his followers, this one included, who then begin to rebel as they genuinely believe that Ganondorf is set to merge the Gerudo states with Hyrule, seeing that this is a step too far. Those that have not defected step forward with the Mad King, as he then takes his plan to the next stage. Actual proof of this power, he takes a group of his Gerudo soldiers to the border between the desert and the mainland, and has them summon a swarm of Molduga, which not only Sonia and Rauru, but Zelda also dispatched with their magical ability, confirming for once and for all to Ganondorf that their power is housed within these stones. Ganondorf now puts forward his most diabolical plan yet, the theft of a secret stone. As his hunger for power only seems to grow by the day, he sets to invade Hyrule, taking what is left of his Gerudo army into the mainland as a grand distraction, which eventually leads to the death of the Queen, Rauru's need for revenge, and the true beginning of the imprisoning war. Rauru first heads to each area again, this time to recruit those he requires into his ranks as a preparation for war. No one though can join him, as leaving their lands would leave them susceptible to attacks from large monsters that have started to threaten them. These monsters are all malice infused, and are all powerful versions of the bosses from Tears of the Kingdom, including the ones we've seen in the trailer so far, as well as a new version of Colgera and Queen Gibdo. The group defeats all of these in order to help and recruit the sages. The leaders all join, aside from the Gerudo who seemingly refuse, just as Rauru proceeds to take the group to the Forgotten Temple in order to hand out the secret stones that will make a difference in the battle ahead. The Gerudo sage-to-be, Vanaboris, along with her new protege, this female here from the trailer, flank the outside of the temple. The sages and Rauru leave the chamber to find themselves surrounded by a Gerudo force, and draw their weapons, only to have Vanaboris tell her troops to stand down before she pledges allegiance to the King of Hyrule. The group set out in an act of war against Ganondorf. Ganondorf, with his massive power, now summons wave after wave of monsters, but the group cut through them all, leading to an epic showdown with Ganondorf, which Ganondorf wins after the group retreat. This would not be the same scene as what takes place within the Imprisoning War, but a sequence that perhaps happens in Hyrule Field as a setup for the group to realise that they need more power. Zelda recounts the legends from her time, told to her by her father King Rome. She recalls the Tapestry of Legend. A princess and her knight were both needed, along with the Sword of Evil's Bane, in order to end the threat of the Calamity. Perhaps this would be the same with Ganondorf himself. She tells Rauru of a tapestry in her time, one housed by the former royal protectors of her family, and a plan is soon hatched. They approach Minoru, asking if there are any other constructs in addition to the one that she uses as her own weapon. She states that there is one, hidden deep within the depths, but it has been inactive for some time. She tells us that it was built to replicate an ancient hero who once stopped a calamity, that it was incredibly powerful, but needed something very specific for it to operate. Something that had not even been felt in Hyrule for thousands of years. The spirit of the hero, in order for it to even activate. Zelda, Minru and Rauru set out to find said spirit and immediately go to the Great Forest to see the Deku Tree, which has of course been overrun by malice. A small panicked Korok runs towards us, likely running away from a set of giant gloom hands which are threatening to destroy the main Deku Tree. There have been a few theories posted surrounding this Korok being a young Deku Tree or the Deku Tree not existing in this era. And I'm not subscribing to either of those ideas because the very fact that Koroks exist means that the Deku Tree has to exist. According to the Wind Waker in the Forest Haven, one of the Koroks tells us, when explaining what would happen should the Deku Tree pass, if that comes to pass, then evil days will follow. The Great Deku Tree's power will wane, and our power will wane with it. We might even wither altogether. This inference on the lore of the Korok, as well as the Deku Tree's constant referral to the Koroks as his children, suggests to me at least that if the Koroks are indeed in this game in any other capacity than this little guy, which I do see them being a collectible within the game, then the Deku Tree must be in existence. So you take the brave Korok with you on your adventure and you save the Deku Tree, who reveals that the Korok is indeed special, and legend had it once that a young boy from the forest left in order to save Hyrule. The legends state that he, a fairy and a princess stopped ancient evil from taking over the lands, and that the spirit of this young Kokiri boy sleeps within this Korok. That is where his courage comes from. However, he cannot unlock his full potential without a special sword that has been kept secret for a millennia, a sword designed to repel evil. With this new information at hand, they travel immediately back to the construct, which reacts with the young Korok and whirs to life, confirming that indeed the Korok does have the spirit of the hero. It suddenly springs into motion, taking on the form of a hero who helped stop a calamity some years before, the small Korok jumping onto his shoulder, his spirit seemingly infused with the spirit. With the spirit of the hero intact, all that remains is a sealed away Master Sword, the final weapon against evil, and so the group set off to find it, hidden deep within the depths. There is, after all, a very famous story in this game world about the creation of a blade, and how a hero literally forged a blade handed down from the goddess in the flames of courage, wisdom and power. This blade housed its own spirit, one that in the end consumed an evil so large that it will set a series of events into place that Hyrule will forever follow. When an incarnation of Hylia is present within a princess, a night will always come, followed by a personification of Demise's hatred. Sealed within this blade, the demonic lord will come to find himself dissipated in the magic of the other spirit that lives within the blade. This would be the sword, the true Master Sword, that would be able to defeat Ganondorf for good. I do not have a clear location for where this sword could be, but judging from Skyward Sword's placement of the sealed grounds, where the sword is laid to rest, we would have to presume somewhere within Faron. There is one area predominantly within Breath of the Wild, as the area did get redesigned in Tears of the Kingdom, that could have potential significance, where motifs of birds and an overarching theme of the sealing grounds also sit. And it could be that underneath this area, now in Tears of the Kingdom, within the depths is home to something sealed away forever, and so the group set out to find the true Master Sword in the depths underneath the Forgotten Temple. They face hardships, a giant demonic Frox, and even perhaps the Yiga get involved, trying to stop the group, but inevitably they fail, and the group find the true Blade of Evil's Bane, its magic having diminished with time, but a faint blue hue around the blade still. Finally, the time is at hand. The sages, Rauru, Minru, Zelda, Sea-Link and the Koroks all form a plan to lure Ganondorf underneath Hyrule Castle, deep underground to a place where the battle will not impact any life on the ground. They pick a location, now known as Ganondorf's Sealing Site, and sure enough he falls for the trap, sending wave after wave of enemies and bosses after the group, but they always come through victorious, until Ganondorf's dark magic starts to affect something around them. The group spin to see Sea-Link, covered head to toe in malice, and realise that they have to fight their own secret weapon. They do so, and win, but it costs them their own win condition against Ganondorf. No Sea-Link, and no Master Sword, means Ganondorf is impossible to beat. He's just too much for them. His magic too strong. He beats them down, even toys with them, allowing them to throw weapons, to have Zelda redirect them with recall, but as he said, he's seen all these tricks before, all but one, as Rauru rushes forward and grasps the chest of Ganondorf, recreating the imprisoning or sealing war depicted within Tears of the Kingdom, and as a result, giving us our final scene of the game. And that is my prediction for the storyline to Age of Imprisonment. But what do you guys think? I want to see those big long essays in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed my take, please like this video and hookshot the subscribe button for more content in the future. I'll see you next time.